and they say, 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 and they say.
Oh, thank God. Love it or hate it, voice line spam is an iconic part of Overwatch. Sure, it's silly and sometimes straight up obnoxious, but these goofy aspects of video games have always been charming to many. It's no surprise then that players quickly discovered that their voice lines were being muted in Overwatch 2. Specifically, there are instances where you're able to hear your own voice lines, but other players in the server cannot. Naturally, this piqued my interest. An invisible, undocumented mechanic is the perfect thing to investigate. It's not going to be easy since Overwatch is closed source and the workshop doesn't reveal much about the communication system. But after being locked in a room with Doomfist for several days, here's what I've found. At all times, the minimum delay between voice lines is half a second. If you try to use a voice line sooner than this interval, it simply won't register.
And they say chivalry is dead.
For optimal spam, you want to wait slightly longer than this to use a voice line.
And they say chivalry is dead.
But you can't do this for very long. Using too many voice lines within an allotted time period results in a temporary mute. We can visualize this mute using my unofficial, though aptly named, mute timer. Every time you use a voice line, the mute timer increments by 8 seconds. Afterward, the timer constantly depletes any built-up time. Anytime the timer has less than 16 seconds, you can successfully use a voice line. If this timer has more than 16 seconds remaining, any voice lines you use will not be heard by other players, despite adding 8 seconds to the timer. You can think of this timer as a type of bank where you become muted if you have too much time accrued. So to ensure optimal spam, we simply need to min-max this timer. By spamming 3 voice lines, waiting 24 seconds, spamming 3 voice lines again, and repeating, we can avoid being muted. But it's not that simple. It never is. After about 12 voice lines used, the punishment for spamming voice lines increases at some unknown rate. This means my timer no longer applies past this point. You need to wait even longer for each subsequent voice line. This can range anywhere from 1 minute between voice lines to over 20 minutes between voice lines. But as far as I can tell, there is no permanent mute. With such strict muting conditions, being muted is not a matter of if, but a matter of when. If we can't prevent being muted, is there any way we can reset it? The mute is tied to your connection to the server, so things like dying, switching heroes, duplicating heroes,
Type, echo. Adaptive circuits engaged.
or switching rounds will not revert the mute. The only way to become fully unmuted is to leave the server and rejoin. After that, you're back at square one and can spam to your heart's content, until you hit 12 voice lines again. This is all going to change soon though. Blizz Winter, one of the designers behind the communication system, wrote a very helpful comment on Reddit, stating that these mute conditions are overzealous and will be eased up when Season 3 starts. So most of this video might be completely irrelevant in a few days, but hey, that's happened before. In the meantime, use this spamming knowledge wisely.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.